Brad. We are live. So we are sitting here having a conversation with Mr. Brad Sirosky. Brad, you're a mental health speaker, you're an advocate, you're an author, you're a counselor, and you're a proud husband and family man. Oh, and a friend of mine, which I'm thankful to say as well too.
Yeah.
Brad, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your life. I know you're a person that is in high demand with a lot of the things you do, and that's because, well, you simply care for what you put out into the world, and that's something I've always appreciated of yourself, buddy.
Thanks,
Brad, of course, buddy. Please let us know, let whoever is going to listen or, down the line going to listen and look back at this episode, tell us a little bit about yourself, buddy.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, there's all the accolades and the accreditations that are tied in, right? As a person, there's the public speaking, which is you and I both kind of run in the same field with that. The speaking at corporate events, schools, et cetera, et cetera. Before any of that happened, I'm 13 years sober, so I've been in recovery for 13 years, and with the recovery journey, I always wanted to help people, so I went to school. I've got a couple different diplomas and certifications. So have a diploma in mental health and wellness. I'm a certified addictions counselor through the CACCF of Canada, and I just became a certified gambling counselor, working on some new certifications around process addictions and stuff like that in the new year. Design programs for school divisions and companies. A couple of them won some awards, so that's all great. But I mean, I'm just basically a regular small town guy from Kenaston, Davidson, Saskatchewan area, which if you don't know where that is, if you go between Saskatoon and Regina, Davidson's the place with the Tim Hortons. You really can't miss it. So just a small town guy from that area who's kind of struggled his whole life with some sort of mental health and addictions issues, and then basically 13 years ago recognized it and started working towards bettering myself, I guess, and figuring out what mental wellness looked like for me. And since then, a lot of things have fallen into place. Like I said, all the business stuff, entrepreneurial stuff, and I met my wife about 7 years ago, 3 years ago, almost exactly December 10th, 3 years ago. We got married on a beach in Mexico. I've got a daughter of my own who is the driving force behind me getting sober. She was the reason. A lot of people say you got to do it for yourself, certainly, but if it wasn't for my daughter, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you right now. So she was the initial spark that kind of fueled my recovery. And with getting married to my wife, I added in two beautiful stepdaughters. So now I'm the proud dad of 3 teenage girls, which is why my hair is all thinning on top. But yeah, and since then, since cleaning up, I just have really been on a journey of self-improvement and education around mental health, and like I'm sure you kind of have figured out, or I've even heard you reference in the past. I realized a little ways in that one of the most powerful things is our story and our voice, and that when other people hear that regular guys like you and I can make it through mental health and addictions issues and all kinds of other issues, it gives them hope and a realization that they can make it through on their own. So that's where the advocacy and the public speaking and all of those things come in. It's all kind of combined together. But really, I'm just basically a small town kid from Saskatchewan who's just trying to figure shit out.
Well, I love that. Just trying to figure shit out. You're humble and an amazing person, Mr. Brad. Two amazing qualities to have together. And talking about the thinning of the hair, I don't have teenage daughters yet, but I'm catching up to the hair loss myself. Being a father of 2 baby girls myself, and a 3rd child on the way too pretty soon. So
yes, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you, buddy. You as well too, man. It's a beautiful thing to be able to be a husband, to be able to be a father, and it truly definitely just helps circle all the purpose that a person can feel and be fulfilled with, when it comes to work and family life. It's a beautiful circle, man. Well, once again, I do truly appreciate you being here with us and having a conversation. I know you're an open book. One of the reasons why I appreciate you such in a good way, man, is that I love having real conversations with people, open conversations, and there's never been one time that me and you have connected that I never got the the real vibes from. So it's always something I appreciated. I know we've wanted to do this podcast episode for a while, but my life got crazy, your life got crazy, but we're here, Brad.
Yeah, we made it.
We made it. So one of the first questions I would love to ask you, Brad, by the way, if you can hear it on your end, Brad, or those who are going to listen, I have a furnace in the background in my new workspace that kicked in a little while back. I'm going to have to figure something out for that moving forward, but it's going to cut out here and there during the time we speak. But I want to talk about a question that I had on top of my mind with you. Now, why did you get into speaking and sharing your story? I know we both agree that sharing your personal lived experiences is one way to empower other people for sure. But how did you get started into public speaking?
Yeah, that's a great question because, to be honest, up till probably a solid 13 and a half years ago, I was petrified of public speaking. Petrified. I had an incident where I was a young boy where I stood up on stage in front of a group of people and really botched a speaking engagement and ran off the stage crying and got made fun of, and it really, I look back on it, I always say that embarrassment can definitely be a traumatic event. And I look back on that, I can remember that event like it's yesterday, and for years it led me to not want to speak. But when I started my recovery, I started it in a program called Teen Challenge Saskatchewan, and that's a year-long faith-based recovery program located in Allen. And part of the recovery program, because it's faith-based, it's not government funded. So part of our role as they called us students there, as students in the program, was to build a testimonial, talk about, be forthright about what led us into the program. And after the 3-month mark, you share it in front of all the men in the program. Wow. And that put the fear of God into me.
Literally,
you know. Yeah, literally. And not just because I had to share in front of a bunch of guys and I had to public speak, which both things scared the heck out of me, but also because I had to be accountable and I had to be honest. And for the first time in my life, they were asking us to do a deep dive into why we were, how we got to where we were at.
Wow.
And so for about 3 weeks leading up to this, I wrote down stuff on paper, and I went up and I shared, and it was, when you shared the first time, you had an unlimited amount of time, so I just kind of let things roll. And then what they asked us to do was to kind of hone it down into a 12 to 15 minute presentation that we could deliver to people, churches, groups and stuff, so that, and then they became sponsors and helped fund the program based off of some of the changes that were made in the men's lives.
Wow.
So I went and started sharing my story in front of churches and youth groups and all these different places. And I've been a poet for years. I have a poetry book that's actually going to hopefully come out next year, but you and I both know how schedules go. So we're hoping for it anyways. But I used to share this piece of poetry at the end, and people would come up to me after and they'd be like, your presentation and your poetry and everything spoke to us. It made us cry. And I had girls and younger people coming up from the church congregations, because my daughter was a young lady, and saying like, it really spoke to our hearts, and it changed the way we look at things. It changed the way we looked at addiction and stuff like that. And I started to realize just how powerful a story and a voice can be. And while I was doing one of those presentations, I did one at a church in my hometown, and a lady seen me speak there, and she came to me after I graduated from the Teen Challenge program and said, would you be interested in talking to some students? I do a program called Talking to Youth Live, and it's based around addictions, and we do it for 6 or 8 schools in the certain school division. Would you be willing to come and share your story? So I said, yeah, and she said, you have this much time. So I wrote it all down on a piece of paper, and I went there the first time, and I always say there was like 400 kids there, but there was like 45. But it felt like 400, and my hand was shaking, and I had this piece of paper and this microphone, and I was vibrating, and I shared my story with these kids, and they came up after, and they thanked me, and they had questions, and they opened up, and they said, like, I have a parent who's struggling, or a brother who's struggling, or an aunt or an uncle or a grandfather, or whatever. Thank you for sharing it. It helps us understand. It lets us know we're not alone. It lets us have a bigger look into what our parents or our brothers or our grandparents are going through. And I I realized that just how important education and letting people know they're not alone was. And it started out as a hobby. And then when I went to school to SIIT to take my mental health and wellness program, there was a facilitation and group work part of the curriculum, and part of that we had to do is we had to deliver a presentation, a keynote basically, and in front of the classroom, and I did it, and there just happened to be this guy that was my instructor named Alan Kaler, who kind of said, you know, there's you've got some potential here, and started talking to me about what he did, and through that things just kind of grew, and leading into COVID, I had a lot of things going on. I think the year of COVID, I actually had about 20 to or so presentations booked leading into that year. And COVID came along and shut all those presentations down except for one or two virtual events. Mm-hmm. But I was lucky I had a spot in the health authority with a full-time position where I was working on the streets with basically the most vulnerable population of men. So I kept full-time work. And when COVID was done, people started calling. And I had conversations with people, and the more I spoke, the more people said, "You have a talent at this." I remember an elder told me when I was going to SIT, he said, "You're a storyteller, son," and he said, "Stories are educational and stories heal, and some people learn more from a story than they'll ever learn from a textbook." So he said, "Don't stop doing what you're doing," and it really encouraged me to kind of build off of that and just keep going. And it's blossomed from there. It's went from, maybe a dozen or 20 events a year up to, upwards of 80 to 100 presentations like we were talking about earlier before we started here over the last year. And it's changed from being predominantly schools to being schools and communities and companies and mental health events and whatever there is, right? So to me, it's been a blessing because it's sharing my story, just the idea of sharing my story, and I hear a lot of people say this, and I believe that everybody in the speaking world mostly believes this, is that if I go to one place and my story changes one person that day, or they hear it and it helps them, then it's worth being there. That's what I'm doing this for.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the evolution of my speaking journey.
I love that evolution, man, right from the get-go. I love that entire story with a couple confirmations, which always helps, but it's not always out there in the world for us to hear. But thankfully, you had some amazing people come into your life. I know me and Alan are very good friends as well. We're all mutual friends. We're all in the same world. And he has been somebody that's helped encourage me as well to continue on, even when times were tough and stuff like that. But
that's one thing I love about that man is I think he has this giving soul. Like he's given me information, and I'm sure you can speak to this as well. That if you booked in with a coach or a bureau that could have cost up tens of thousands of dollars, and he just shares with you because he wants to see other people not just be successful, but he wants to see as many people help as possible with messages. And he's just he's an amazing man when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, and in so many other ways as well.
I couldn't agree more, brother. And you know what? You'll never have an argument with me on that. He's somebody I consider one of my best friends as well. And couldn't agree more. I've paid coaches hundreds, thousands of dollars, not hundreds, thousands, but thousands and hundreds of dollars to be taught different lessons and stuff. And you're right. He's always been there and willing to help out another individual, which is an amazing thing. I loved also the confirmation you got from the elder. Storytelling is powerful. It's a teaching tool, and in the Indigenous world, storytelling has been a way of teaching things for hundreds of years. And I definitely agree with that. And it's a very powerful statement, because I am one of those individuals as well, that when somebody tells me a story, I learn from that story itself. And that's one of the reasons probably why I love doing the same thing, is because I'm not always a textbook kind of person. I'm the kind of person that learns from other people's lived experiences and stories, and it's a way to help shape our own moving forward as well. And some of our tougher experiences as well lead us into where we're going next, basically. But I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit too, is
Yeah.
one of the things that I found out at a very young age, because I have ADHD, so I really struggled in school. I struggled with the format they had there, the notes on the chalkboard, the reading, the textbooks. But if you read a story, if we watched a movie, if there was some kind, they would give us I accelerated. I had a 90 average in English because I loved to read. Because when I got into a story, I could totally absorb myself into it, and I could picture the characters, and I could do all of that. And I learned the best that way. And I think the idea of storytelling, there's a lot of people that can learn a tremendous amount from textbooks alone, but there's a lot of individuals who learn the best from storytelling. So I think that, when you have a world where somebody comes out and shares their story and can provide some educational pieces along with it, it's that's an amazing thing to have, because not everybody learns the same.
Couldn't agree more, man. Not everyone is made from the same cookie cutter pattern,
Right.
And to confirm with you on the ADHD thing, I am severe to high with ADHD. Anyone who knows me is we're in the same boat. And school wasn't always my favorite place to be, but there was times where there's projects that just resonates with who you are as a human being, and it carries you and moves you forward. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. I would love to ask you, my man, so give us a story of some of the impact a presentation has had on an audience member from one of your presentations. So whether it's somebody coming up to you after you present to either a school, a corporate company, a community, or somebody sends you an email or a text message after. I love stories like that. It's something that became one of my new addictions, to be honest. And I would love for all of us to hear one of the stories you have to share. Of course, you don't need to share names or anything, but
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to be honest when you get into this field, and it's hard to pick one that resonates with you more than others. But there's a couple there. I spoke at a school at Beardy's First Nation, and I'm Caucasian white person, and it was a predominantly Indigenous group, and one of the teachers reached out to me after and said it was the first time that they had a presentation where the kids never picked up their cell phones. And she said afterwards that when I always share this part of my journey through SIAT, how when I went into SIAT, it was interesting because there was like one or two white people and the rest were Indigenous people. So it was a different environment for me. But just like when I went in the Teen Challenge program, all the Indigenous people in that school wrapped around me, and they introduced me to this beautiful culture, and they taught me about all the cultural aspects of it. They took smudging, and they took me to powwows and round dances, and I was invited to sweats, and I was introduced to the idea of holistic well-being through the teachings of the medicine wheel. And after I spoke at Beardy's, a lot of the kids came up to me after and said, "Do you know it's so nice to see somebody who's not Indigenous stepping into the Indigenous world and learning." And that was a big thing for me to hear, because that was the main reason that I went to an Indigenous school. And I also had an experience from a girl who reached out to me through a treatment program after and said I inspired her to go to school. And I've had that experience more than once through speaking and through clients. I had a client of mine who I worked with for a lot of years, and then he ended up going to the same school and becoming an addictions counselor and now working in that world. So all of those different feedbacks, of like how your story can really resonate with people. And then you have stories of kids who say, like, you helped me understand my parents. My parent or my brother is struggling with addictions, and when you share, I realize first off that there's hope, and second of all that my dad's not a bad person or my mom's not a bad person, they're just struggling. And there's just so many messages like that just fill your heart, and that's what keeps you going. So like I said, it's hard to pinpoint one in particular. There's so many of them. It's truly been a blessing. And as you know, this world of speaking, where you unpack a lot of your personal stuff, and it can be a very heavy world sometimes. And I think a lot of people kind of sometimes don't recognize how hard it is to be an open book and share all of this personal information with people. So when you're sometimes when I've had times, and these are some of the most important times where I've shared and I haven't felt very good going into it. I haven't been in the best space mentally or emotionally or physically or whatever it may be. And people come up after and they share with you what it meant to them, and it fills you up and keeps you going when you're going through a tough time, because we're not bulletproof, we're not superheroes, and we do share a lot of our own personal stuff, and that can be hard sometimes. I shed tears very regularly in my presentations. So when people come up after and say we appreciate the vulnerability and we appreciate you, it keeps you going.
Oh man, I can relate with that, hands down. I love that, buddy. That's amazing. Like I said, that became my new addiction. That's why I'd love to hear your perspective on it. I know whether it's 10 people, whether it's hundreds, whether it's thousands that listen to our podcast episode, I know there's going to be a good chunk that get value from that. So thank you for sharing, brother. You know, talk about getting teary-eyed and emotional while you speak. I swear, it's about 50% for me where I get emotional.
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional right now, brother, because that resonated with me, and I appreciate that a great deal. That's genuine. That's integrity. That's heart, brother, and I love you for that, man. It's amazing. Oh, okay. Where do you see your career going on, Mr. Brad?
Well, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly where I see it, because I have a tough time sitting still. But I can tell you where I hope to see it over the next couple of years, and I hope for as long as I have a message to carry, and as long as there's people that are willing to hear that message, that I'm able to share it. The idea of public speaking, it fills my heart, it fills my soul, and it's really where my true love is. It's my number one love. So I see myself obviously growing and evolving, and also kind of transforming into however that may look. Now, some people have said to me, are you leaning towards corporate? Are you leaning towards schools? I'm leaning towards helping people wherever I am. And so that goes through my whole life. Like, I have a counseling practice, and that is probably right now, a solid 30% of what my work weeks look like, and maybe even more. So, and that's not something that I see myself giving up, and maybe scaling depending on how busy the public speaking is. But I keep a small clientele, so I do have room for flexibility, and I like that because it also allows me to be able to see them whenever they need to be seen. So that the counseling will be a part of that for sure. And I started out my career as an addictions counselor. Primarily, one of the main reasons I was hired into the health authority to help people was to deliver men's groups, and that's a huge part of me as well. I'm actually starting a brand new men's group, and I'm hoping for a late January start date. But there's always funding and stuff like that. There's a lot of people don't understand the behind the scenes stuff that comes along with it. So I'm hoping to no later than February 1 kind of start date for a new men's group in Saskatchewan here. It's going to be very, very affordable. I think I'm going to do about $10 a session, which is an $80 commitment for 8 sessions, and we'll continue to have mental health topics and just encourage men to be better men, to be vulnerable, to be better partners, and learn from them as much as they learn from me. So I know for sure over the next year, those 3 things are going to keep me busy enough alone. And then when you add in the idea of balance, which is super important for me, I have 3 teenage daughters, which we've already mentioned. I love to see them play their sports. I love to be a part of their lives. I love to sit with them and I would say help with their homework, but I'm really no help. So I really just encourage them more than anything else.
We all need motivators.
I just really want to be able to keep. It's one thing that's always been important for me, is to be able to. When I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and when we talked about, we said how much is actually enough, right? As far as the work and the money and the success and all that stuff. And to me, success looks the way success looks to me, anyways, is a balance of it all. Money, as much as I wish it didn't, money does make the world go round, right? We need to have it to survive. The idea of working, I enjoy my job, so it doesn't even feel like work. So I love doing it. And that can sometimes bring in a problem because I love my work so much. I often have to remind myself that there's 4 people waiting for me at home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if
That
I'm
one
not,
resonates with me.
yeah, and if I'm not, my daughter was the whole reason I got sober, which I mentioned earlier. So if I get sober for my daughter and then I start pouring into something else and disappear from my daughter's life, it kind of defeats the purpose of why I did it to begin with. And now I have 2 more stepdaughters and a wife and friends and family, extended family, and all of those things. So my big goal, maybe where I hope to see myself, is to find a happy balance with it all.
I know that same friend that you were just chatting about. I know I've had that same conversation too. Something about somebody who is a recovering addict, brother, still has that in our DNA, right? That ambition, that desire to have something over and over again and more. It doesn't go away. We just find better ways to put that energy, right? And to talk about that, I'm in the same boat. I got 2 babies. I got my wife. We got the 3rd one on the way. And I, at times, have to reflect. Okay, Cody, step back from work. Work will be here. Your family needs you as well too. And I often also have to ask myself, how much time am I putting to work compared to where I need to be putting at home? And that balance that we're talking about, I don't know if a person ever finds that perfect balance, or that's a part of the pursuit of life, is trying to find that balance. But when it comes to money, I'm in the same boat as you too. One of the things that I heard on another podcast a while back is, if you can afford a supper or a meal and going out to eat and all that stuff, and you're not stressed about the bill at the end of the day, I mean, you're living an amazing life at that point.
Yeah.
And so that goes to, if your bills are paid, you have a little money in your accounts or whatever you need, life is good at that point. It's amazing at that point. It's nothing wrong to be ambitious, to want to be a person of service to so many people in the world. But, it is a fine line, especially with somebody as a recovering addict, myself included. I suffer from that one once in a while, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think even to add on to the recovering addict piece, is that this society now, it just pushes this idea of more. It's in everything. It's, all the advertising, all the, do you have this, all the comparison, all this, like you're wear these runners, wear this, and for me, it comes down to that, what we were just talking about, that is enough, like I go to probably 6 to a dozen concerts a year. Tickets aren't cheap now.
Yeah.
I just got back from a trip to Mexico with my wife. Like, I'm not struggling. So, but the idea, especially in a recovering addict, is more. You go on one trip. Well, maybe next year I can do 2.
Yeah.
You make 75, 100,000. Well, maybe next year I need to make 150, and it comes back to that: when is enough, and where do you find what do you call success, right? Like, is it the dollar value that you made that year? Is it the time that you spent with family? Is it the clothing you're wearing, or the vehicle you're driving, or the trips you're going on? Or is it all of the above, Because all of those things make me whole, and the trips and all that other stuff, they're nothing without my family. So I have to remember that I have to find a balance, because I could do Christmas with just a roof over my head and a can of Spam, as long as I had my girls with me.
There you go, brother.
Yeah.
That's an amazing Christmas at the end of the day. Just with those things, for sure. I love that, brother. I love that. And there's a reason why you've been at one of the top of my list for the podcast episodes. It's because I know just past conversations, previous conversations, our friendship over the years of where we've connected, it's just, we resonate on so many levels, man. And I know if, the conversations we had, I know if we recorded a lot of those, I know many others would have got value. And so here we are, and adding value one person at a time.
I love getting a chance to talk to you, Cody, because, I have such admiration for you, and a lot of the admiration is because of the conversations we've had, and because of the the way that you handle yourself and handle things and handle your family and all the work you put in and the help you do for others and I think that I'm really glad we got to actually sit down and do this, and I look forward to seeing where our friendship kind of continues to grow from here.
For sure, brother. The feeling is mutual. That's the second time you made me tear up on this podcast. I appreciate you, brother, more than you know, man, to be honest. Oh, okay, Mr. Brad. So you finished a book, and it's been out for a while now. I was reading it this week. Very powerful, very raw, very real. I'll be honest, I felt like, a lot of the stories that you shared in your book, I didn't get a chance to finish it completely because, prior commitments and everything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We just basically booked this episode of this podcast like this week. So,
Yeah.
it's very quick that we made this happen, thankfully enough, because the stars aligned. But I wanted to finish it, but I definitely know this book is powerful. And it's like it says right on the, cover. I got it right in front of me because I was reading it yesterday. It's The Long Road of Recovery, one man's journey through the world of mental health and addictions. And for those who haven't read it, please pick yourself up a copy, order it where you can. I know Amazon, and Brad probably has it on your site. Tell us about the journey of this book, brother, please.
Yeah, and before I start, I want to say I wish I had your book sitting right next to me. So Take Your Life Back, right? Is the title. And I wish I had it right there so I could plug yours, because I read yours and it's absolutely fantastic as well. There was so many when you read, you pick up so many commonalities and things that we have, but also so many things that are different. There's so many like little tidbits and learning pieces, and I loved it. So congratulations on your book too.
Thanks, brother.
As far as the journey with mine, it was a long one. I started writing a book 9 years ago. I mean, I started writing books. The initial idea was to write a poetry book, and that was done a long time ago. I've been writing lyrics. It's in and out of a band in high school, and I've been writing lyrics ever since then. I've been a huge music fan my whole entire life, and it just seemed like every time I wrote down any type of journaling or anything, it rhymed. So poetry seemed to be the way to go. But then I started thinking about one of my favorite things to read are tell-alls, like the autobiographies from like musicians and actors, and even the idea of, I started reading a lot of books around people who had went through the depths of addiction and had serious mental health struggles, and there's a lot of fantastic books out there. So I thought, you know what, I want to do this. But I started out and I started writing this tell-all, and it wasn't the place or the time, and I don't know that it ever will be, for me to write a tell-all. It would, in my opinion, it just would have brought up a bunch of stuff that's already been moved past and healed, and maybe ripped the scab off of things that are so close to being completely healed, that I just didn't want to do that. So I had this whole skeleton of a book, and basically I kept about 8 or 10 things that I liked, and I scrapped the rest. And I said, like, how can I share some of the stuff I went through, but also share some of the things I've learned since I sobered up? And that became the idea. Over the last 13 years, I've picked up these little tips and tricks and ideas from everything from addictions counselors to friends to other speakers to things I learned on my own to, television programs and books and all these things, and AA meetings and NA meetings and all of these things so I wanted to kind of write a book that shared a little bit of my story, but also told people how they could promote wellness, not just sobriety. It's not just a book about being sober. It's a book about being well. And so I already had the kind of intro piece, which is pretty raw. That's the part that kind of gets people. I already had that part written for the other book. So I'm like, if I just take this and work on it a little bit, that can be the intro, and it can tell people. And it kind of leads up to the point where I sobered up, and I asked myself the question, like, okay, I'm sober. What am I going to do now? And then the next chapters talk about what I've done between the time I sobered up and to the time I wrote that book, July of last year. Some of the tips, things like self-care and healthy connections and goals and plans and accountability and boundaries and trauma, dealing with past traumas and never giving up and all of those things that I think are so important in people's lives. And I shared some stories from clients and some stories from self and some stories that I've learned along the way. And I've shared some things I've learned through my education in that book, just to kind of have it be a story, but also be a piece that you could learn from. And hopefully, so it's a little bit of autobiography mixed with maybe self-help.
Yeah.
But it came together. In the speaking world, in my speaking world anyways, July is traditionally a slow month for me. And so not this last July, but the one before, I said, okay, I'm not booking anything. I'm going to write a book. And every morning I went and sat on my back deck and I had coffee and I wrote.
Beautiful.
And every afternoon for 2 hours, I would go back and I'd read through the stuff I wrote and I'd scrap the stuff that didn't belong. And I'd do that, and then I took it to a friend who helped me edit it because I'm terrible with commas and periods and punctuation and paragraphs and all of those things. Yeah. And then we went through the process of the editor and the publisher and all that stuff. But from start to finish, it started in July and it was released on January 13th, which just happens to be my mother's birthday. So that was pretty amazing. And by February 1st, it hit the bestsellers list in substance use and in mental health. So I was super pumped about the response to it, and I continue to get messages from people all over the place saying, what you said in that book, some of the things that you put into that book into play every day. And then to me, it served its purpose. Like my editor asked me, what do you hope to accomplish with it? Or my publisher, sorry. And I jokingly said, I said, first of all, I want to make my money back. It's a really healthy endeavor, buying all the books and paying the editor and the publisher and all, and getting the actual physical copy done, as you know.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd love to make my money back, but for even more importantly than that, I want it to help people. And then jokingly, I said at the end, I would love to see it hit the bestsellers list. And I think I got my money back. From the feedback, I'd say that it's helped a handful of people, so that's great. Yeah. And I hit the bestsellers list, so it's been a blessing, and I'm not done yet. I know that.
Oh, I love that. And you know what? When it comes down to it, like we were just saying, when is it enough, or when are you happy? When are you satisfied? And if you've checked all those boxes, brother, I mean, that's a book that is well worth its weight in the time and effort that you put into it. And it is not an easy process, and it's not a cheap process. As I spent a few $1,000s just trying to get the cover, trying to get it structured, trying to get it edited, and I'm in the same boat. It was, as long as we get to a pivotal point to where it makes its money back, that's amazing. After that, it's just perfect. Everything else is just a bonus, right? And then as well, it impacts people too. Incredible.
Yeah, and one of the main things one of the words that keeps rolling over in my mind over and over again through this year, through the last couple of years, is perspective for me. We talked a little bit earlier about where I hope to see myself, and some of the accomplishments. 12 years ago, I helped a person get into a treatment program, and I spent 2 days standing in my kitchen, making phone calls, advocating, learning about treatment programs, which treatment program is going to be a fit, and talking to people and advocating and doing these things. And I remember saying to myself, if this is something that I could do for the rest of my life and get paid enough to live to do it, I would be happy with that. And I've surpassed that, and it's great to continue to grow, and I will continue to grow. But I always bring myself back to the idea of, just slow down, because could you imagine 12 years ago writing a book? No. Could you imagine 12 years ago speaking to thousands and thousands of people? No. Could you imagine having your own successful private practice 12 years ago? No. So I try and make sure that I ground myself and bring myself back and remember that, you're at an okay spot in your life, because as we mentioned before, maybe the idea of addict, or maybe the idea of just entrepreneur and pushing for more and more, often I push myself so much that it can sometimes cause my own harm.
Yeah. Like I said too as well, I can resonate with you on that, and it's a fine line to walk for sure. But perspective, it can help a person in so many aspects in their life, whether it's professional, personal, everything. And I mean, the truth of the matter is, if you're happy doing what you're doing, that's a big win in life right there alone, you know, and you're helping people, also a very big win in life too. And you're doing all those things and then more, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not almost at the time, but we're getting to that time where we're got that hour-ish mark that we're aiming for. But we still got a few more questions, brother. And I think it'll be a good way to kind of near the end. So what is one idea you wish you knew for yourself, for your journey before you hit, let's say, 30?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Sorry, buddy.
You know what? The one thing that I wish I knew then, and I still have to talk to myself about now, is the idea of really recognizing the fact, like trusting the process.
Yeah.
That I'm a spiritual person. I believe in a higher power. I believe that you and myself and guys like Al and other speakers like Laura Lawrence and people like that, we're this is what we were sent here to do. But I also have this idea that can cause me a lot of mental health issues at time of not trusting a process or constantly worrying about the future. And I wished back then, before I was 30, that I could just go, okay, just trust the process. You know, follow your heart and trust the process. Those are the big things, because my heart and the process have kind of, as long as I'm putting my heart into things, I know that I'm going to end up in the place that I'm supposed to be. And I was always so worried about what I'm going to be, you know, at 18, at 25, at 30. I was working in nightclubs at 31, you know, is this my life? You know, what happens when I'm 50? I don't want to be that creepy old guy in the bar, right? Like all those things. And instead of just trusting the process, I've spent my entire life worrying. Yeah. And I still have to tell myself now, look at where you were 12 years ago, trust the process, enjoy this more, worry less. You know, if your heart's in the right place, good things will happen. I believe that if I keep putting good out, my Creator, my God, will keep putting good in front of me. And good doesn't mean finance necessarily. It means health and happiness and family and all of those things. So I wish before I was 30, I knew to just follow my heart and trust the process more.
That's beautiful, man. I had lunch with a good friend today. His name's Daryl. We talked about the same thing. Anything of line of work, when you put other people's like wants and desires and their needs into perspective, and you take all the other selfish things out of your mind and you just put them ahead of yours when it comes to what kind of value you can add to other people, whether it's your business, whether it's your service business, product business, magic can happen. Because the truth is, you don't weigh all those selfish thoughts on your own mind, but you're doing it for the good reasons. And you just talked about that, you know. Trust the process is also one of those things. You know, as a speaker, you don't always, every single time, might have the feedback that you want, but it's always there. And that's a beautiful thing. You don't know exactly how many lives you're changing or affecting, but it's always there. And with right intention behind everything, there's even that many more that are out there. And that's a beautiful, beautiful message to share with people for sure, brother.
Yeah, it's
okay.
just
Go on,
even what you said about the idea of, you know, not knowing how many people, you know, it might not seem like you even hit anybody with that message. And like about a month back, I was speaking at a school, and if you've spoken at school, well, I know you've spoken at schools before, and you know that the crowds change from school to school, and some of those crowds can be tougher crowds. Some of them you get this amazing feedback, and everybody just loves you, and they hug you afterwards. And I had a day, I actually spoke 3 back-to-back days, and the day before, all the kids came up and hugged my ankles and wouldn't let me go and were giving me hugs. And then the next day, I had this really tough high school group, and it kind of shook me. And I was like, oh man, you know, I didn't really hit home today. I didn't give my best performance. And after I was done, this kid that sat in the back the whole time, and he looked like he was pissed off through the whole thing, he walked up to me after and he said, "Can I give you a hug?" And tears, and and it's like you just got to keep going, because you said this, you never know who's getting that message that you don't even even realize they're getting it. Because if I would have guessed by his face, I would have said, not only was he not receiving a message, but he didn't even want me to be there. But that's, you know, and I'm sure you've got tons of stories that are similar.
Yeah, oh yeah. I definitely know, you know, that's a prime example. I love that story you shared. I know when I went and spoke for an elementary school, this was like 3 years ago. You know, I'm there to speak to a class of grade sixes, I think it was at that time. So it's just a small, intimate class. And it was a great session. I was happy. It was, you know, it was a good presentation. The feedback of the kids there, they were, you know, into it. But it was walking out as the educational assistant walked me out of the school. And he stopped me as I was reaching for the door. I said, thanks for walking me out, man. And he gave me a, you know, he asked if he could give me a hug. He's been thinking of changing a few things in his life. And right there and then, man, I realized, I'm like, I thought I was there to speak to grade sixes.
Yeah.
But it was the educational assistant that, like, we hugged. I shook his hand. I said, you know what, we'll talk some more. We ended up talking a little bit down the line. And it's just what a cool change of perspective when it comes to, you're not always also there to impact who you think you're there. You're there to do your job, and for those who are in that area or meant to be there and receive the message that they need to receive, it all comes together one way or the other. And you don't always get that instant confirmation, like we said, but, you know, and it's sometimes the individuals who you think are getting the messages the least are the ones who resonates with the most. And that's a lot of power, for sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is absolutely. And you know, when you talk, we talked a little bit earlier too about the idea of people being in the same lanes and stuff. And I struggled with a little bit for a while, you know, with kind of the competition idea with other speakers. But as I became more comfortable with my spirituality, and I still have to pray on this every once in a while, I realized that people end up where people are supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, if I end up in this place, it's because I truly believe it's because somebody in that room is going to catch the message that they need to hear that day. And if you end up in a certain place, I believe it's because you were meant to be there. And Laura and you know, all these other speakers, there's great speakers coming up too, DJ McGrath and all these people that are, Justin Hodgson, you know, he does the warrior mentality stuff. I had a chance to see him speak. There's so many amazing people coming up, and for a little while the competitive nature of me was like, you know, how come I'm not there or whatever. Yeah. And then there's constantly this message from my higher power saying, you'll be where you're supposed to be, they'll be where they're supposed to be, and just relax because everything's going to be taken care of. You know, the people that need to hear that message maybe need to hear Cody's message that day versus yours or Justin's message or Laura's or whoever, right? So yeah, it's a great thing. And like you said, you don't even know. You could leave a room thinking you haven't spoke to anybody and get 3 or 4 emails months down the road from different people in that room that day.
Yeah. And, you know, we share that as well, too. Being competitive isn't a bad thing. You know, I'm in the same boat. If I have a slow 2 weeks, I'm really chomping at the bit to go and speak. And, you know, if I see other speakers doing it, I'm like, I want to be you guys. And there's passion behind it. There's love. There's intention behind it. But, you know, being competitive is good. It helps get a person up in the morning at times when other things, you know, you need a little bit of motivation. So I'm right there with you. I promise you that. But we're all doing the same, you know, beautiful work. So that's amazing as well, too, truly.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So I would like to ask you, as we kind of get closer here, what is a message you'd like to leave with the audience after all your years of experience, your work through addictions, mental health, entrepreneurship? What is one impactful message you want to leave with people before we kind of start to wrap things up? Mr. Brad.
You know, I think a message that I carry and I pretty much kind of almost end most of my presentations with is just the idea of never giving up. Never giving up on the battle, never giving up on self. You know, I always say struggles are just stepping stones on the way to success. But the idea of never giving up, right? Like there were so many times in my life where I came dangerously close to giving up, like borderline overdoses, all kinds of seizures through alcohol. In that period when I was going through my darkest times, there was certainly numerous times where I thought about taking my own life and stuff like that, and just the idea of never giving up. It's, you know, I work with people who have been through hell and back. And I've talked to this young man numerous times, so feel okay sharing his story. But I worked with a young fellow that he lost the bottom half of his leg to some form of infection from he thinks possibly use, and I believe he lost a couple friends right around that time too, to use, and I met him in the hospital, and I basically talked to him about what he wanted to do. I was his addictions counselor, and he said, I want to get better and I don't want to give up. And man, within a year, he was dropping free throws in his backyard. We worked together. He got a prosthetic. I drove him to some appointments. We did some addictions work. But this guy never gave up. And because of that, he's got this super amazing job right now. And he went through the same school. This is one of the guys I talked about earlier who went through the same school that I went through. And so he's got a mental health and addictions background, and he's giving back to people in their own way because he chose to never give up. And it's amazing what can happen when we choose to give up, because there's such a huge trickle-down effect with recovery and not giving up. I followed a guy into Teen Challenge and then I followed him into SIAT, and then I helped a friend of mine get into Teen Challenge, and then he went to SIAT, and then this other young guy I was talking about. So even if you take the four of those guys alone who never gave up on themselves and recovered, they now have this trickle-down effect where they're helping clients, and their clients are sobering up and helping people, all because people chose to never give up. And so, I understand. I understand that things are hard. I still struggle with my own mental health, and I understand that things are hard. But I would like to encourage everybody to never give up, and also to remember to, Jelly Roll gave this amazing speech at, I think it was the Country Music Awards, where he's like, the window is so much bigger than the rear view mirror. Don't forget to look at what's ahead of you. But also don't forget to look in the rearview mirror every once in a while to see how far you've come because once you choose to not give up, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And you're proof of that, Cody, and I'm proof of that, and guys like Al are proof of that, and our clients and our friends and the people who go through, see our keynotes and go through schools, and the people that choose to never give up. Everybody makes a difference in other people's lives, and it doesn't have to be through public speaking. There's so many people that do it through community service and all these other things, right? So just my big message, my big hope is that you never give up. That's what I'd like to leave people with.
That's a beautiful perspective, brother. I know one thing that keeps me grounded always in the end is, if you're not either grateful or happy or appreciative, or, you're depressed or you're sad, or, something just has you weighing down, well, if you take a moment and you pause and you reflect and you tell yourself, you know what, you used to wish 5 years ago you're at the place where you're at right now. It's a beautiful way to reset things. And you can't say that if you give up too early. You can't, right? And so a good lesson to leave people with is don't give up. Beautiful. So, Brad, I once again want to thank you for taking the time out of your life, out of your family life, out of your business life, of everything. Of course, joining me in this conversation. I appreciate our chat very much, deal, brother. I truly do. And I love that you're out there in the world doing your thing. I appreciate it so much. And I know there's hundreds and thousands of people that appreciate it as well, including your family and your friends like myself and Alan. But, Brad, we're coming to a close here. So where can people get a hold of you? Where can people find you if they're interested in either booking you or just having a conversation, or, maybe you want to reach out to Brad about possibly having a session with him in his counseling private practice? Where's the best places people can reach, brother?
Yeah. So, obviously I'm on all social media platforms except for TikTok. Instagram, you can find me, Brad_Sirosky. Facebook, just under Brad Sirosky. LinkedIn, under Brad Sirosky. My webpage is the best way to connect with me. It's just www.bradsirosky.com, and there's a Connect with Brad button on there. It takes you directly to an email that connects with me right off the bat. So that's where you can connect with me for counseling, for public speaking, if you just want to chat. Any of those things, obviously. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I've been pretty quiet as of lately, but I also did an unplug when I went to Mexico, and I'm going to jump back in the new year. So please follow my social media pages. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And yeah, that's it. BradSirosky.com is the easiest way to find me.
Perfect, brother. And when I start releasing these episodes and they're out in the world, I'll definitely make sure to get the name, the spelling, everything correct, and make it easier for people to find you when they start listening to these episodes and stuff like that. So,
right on, brother. Well, I don't know when this is coming out, but right now it's right before Christmas, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not. But Merry Christmas to you, and Merry Christmas to everybody out there. And I really can't express enough how grateful I am for the opportunity to be on here, Cody. And obviously, if I can say anything back to you, man, you're inspirational to many, and what you're doing is fantastic. And never stop, never give up on what you're doing, because man, you're changing people's lives, and it's an honor to be on here with you today, man.
Well, third time you made me tear up on this podcast episode, brother. So nothing but love for you, appreciation for you, man, and the feeling is very mutual. So thank you, brother. And my goal is these episodes that are recorded are going to be before Christmas, if not right after. And if it's after, Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Happy holidays, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, happy holidays. And this has been an episode with Mr. Brad Sirosky on the Life is Limitless podcast. So, greatly appreciate Brad. And for those who are going to listen, I know from the bottom of my heart, you guys will definitely grab a few messages that will help you in your life after hearing Brad and some of his stories. So thank you for listening, everybody. And thank you, Brad.
Thank you.